A garden of pure ideology, where each worker may bloom, secure from the pests, obeying contradictory thoughts. Our unification as wolves is more powerful a weapon than any fleet or army on earth. We are one people, with one will, one resolve, one cause. Our enemies shall talk themselves to death, and we will bury them with their own confusion. We shall prevail.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
Hi, everybody. So anybody remember that little moment? We were thinking back on how we could start, and that seemed kind of obvious. I was thinking about it as well, that the fact that I remember where I was, like you all do if you're old enough, when John Kennedy was shot. I remember where I was when Dwight Clark made the catch and got those Dallas Cowboys behind us. And I remember where I was during that. The funny part is, it was easy to know that the Kennedy assassination was such a big deal and that the ripple effects it would have. It was also good to know that the Dwight Clark catch would change history for the 49ers. It wasn't as clear to me, maybe it was to you, that that moment in 1984 would be such a dramatic change in the way our lives happen, in the way the Bay Area happens, and so we, as I said, we thought that would be a fun way to start. So that was the year that this company was formed, and if you enjoyed coming in today, you saw that we tried to take advantage of that. On the back of your name tags, we had fun with albums. We had fun picking the music, the invitation. Anybody like that? So we had fun with everything from thinking back to what was happening in 1984. Reagan was president, Thatcher was prime minister. Think to what you think the answer is to the following. What was the Dow Jones in 1984? 1,211. So it's up 20 times as we sit here. Interesting. What do you think the Fed fund rate was as opposed to today? 10.75. You could actually buy a house in the Bay Area for about $100,000 that you would live in. So we had fun with all of those things. When we did the invitation, we tried to use some other puns like long playing, and we had in one mind we were going to do the A and B side, and we had all the speakers on one side or the other, and then I said, I'm not telling anybody they're on the B side of that invitation. So we canned that, so they're all on both sides. I thought I'd give you a little bit of an overview of who are we, who are you, why are we here. So we, TMG, as you may know, is a mixed-use development company headquartered here and doing business only in the Bay Area. We have done business in many of the cities that are represented here. And so this is an event we thought made a lot of sense. I'll tell you why in a minute. Who are you? You're our partners, you're political leaders, you're our associates, you're the folks that provide us debt and equity, your tenants, brokers, and most of all, your friends. So the purpose at the beginning of this is to announce an anniversary and to look ahead to the future. In the past, we've done these before, if you've been around. We've had a 20th anniversary in 2004. It was our first forum, and since we seem to like puns, 2020 was the theme. So look clearly, 2020. We had Ed Penho, the founder of Chiron, on a panel, and we had Scott Cook from Intuit, that founder. So then 2009 came along. Anybody remember 2009? Ugh, not a good year to have a party. But somebody said, 25 is the silver gift. So we came up with the silver lining. We had to look ahead and try to figure out what was going to be the silver lining. So some of those speakers were Ron Sturzenegger, who had the unfortunate draw of at Bank of America getting the countrywide portfolio to work out. So we wanted to see what he thought about looking ahead. And then Mark Tessier-Levin, who was at Genentech at the time, now the president of Stanford, was telling us a little bit then about biotech. Our 30th anniversary was in 2014, and we were overwhelmed. Everything was going strong. Companies were being created that we'd never heard of the likes of. And so the word reinvention came up. People were reinventing what they did and how we looked at things. And then we said, maybe we're at that stage where we need to reinvent reinventing. So that was the theme of that. And Ron Conway, one of our advisors, was on the panel talking about his angel investments. And Monica Fallbush, who had my favorite title of all time, she was Global Employee Success at a company called Salesforce. And that was a really fun day as well. So then we got to thinking about this going forward, and we said, 35, it just doesn't ring a bell. And it was another 5-year cycle. And so we said, you know what? Things are accelerating so much that really we needed to look at it differently. If you think about the accelerations, iPhone and its equivalents are ubiquitous. Uber, Airbnb, drones, driverless cars, AI, machine learning, all of those things, Amazon, Google, Facebook, high-speed rail maybe. And so it kind of made you think about how the Bay Area works. Well, it wasn't that long ago that Silicon Valley wasn't really part of the San Francisco story. It was down there. It was the orchards. And it was tech that sort of kept to itself. So we bought a building at that time, 2000-ish, that was the Southern Pacific headquarters building. And we said, you know, we're going to redo it. We need to get office tenants. And so we went to interview a bunch of brokers, and we said, so what do you guys think? And they said, well, you'll have finance, and you'll have insurance, and you'll have real estate, fire. And we said, gee, what about tech? This is 2000. Tech doesn't come to San Francisco. You'll never get a tech tenant. And we just said, that's just wrong. So we found a broker who had a southern, funny how that comes off my tongue so easily. We found a broker, then we fired him. We found a broker who had a Silicon Valley presence that we liked, and we brought them on. So who did we lease it to? The anchor tenant was Del Monte, yes, not tech, a 100-year-old manufacturing company. But after that, we had Autodesk, we had a company called Salesforce, and a company called Microsoft. Pretty good tenant reps from the technology world. So that, I think, was our way of sort of seeing that the Bay Area was going to change, and that our perspective had to be different. Today, the Bay Area has a lot of problems. You all know them: housing, homelessness, transportation, and climate. So we kept thinking, what should our perspective be? So I had the opportunity to be the chairman of the Bay Area Council for the last couple of years. And Jim Wunderman, who's sitting somewhere, and I used to talk a lot about his concept of a mega region. And so we kept thinking about that. And then I got to be a co-chair of an organization called CASA, which is part of the MTC family of ABAG and MTC, with its goal of just housing the Bay Area. That's all. Just house the Bay Area. And again, it made you think about how do you do that from a macro perspective, including outside just the 9 counties. So if you've been to our office, you've seen a chart that flails along the wall, half of the building practically. And we call it the drivers of real estate. So what causes the demand that leads to our production of real estate? And so we break it down. The first third is in the issues that happen in the world, then the region, and then innovation. And so we thought with that perspective, we needed to look further out than 5 years. So that brought us to that moment one day when we said, hey, you know, we're a third of a century old. And how are we going to reimagine ourselves in 2051? So we put together some speakers, and we said, what will this look like? And we came up with a concept that is sort of a triple header. We have, as you can see on the stage, we're going to have 2 speakers who will have a conversation. I'll introduce them in a minute. Then we're going to have 2 folks who will come out that do something that looks a little familiar, Didn't steal that idea completely, but we did. And so they're going to do some TMG talks, we're going to call it. And then at the end, you'll have an opportunity, and David Cropper will introduce them, an opportunity to talk about futurists and kind of eavesdropping. Matt's going to introduce the two TMG talk people. So let me give you a little bit of housekeeping. We'll do a little Q&A during the first part. We won't do Q&A during the talks. And then we'll try to do a little Q&A at the end, and we'll kind of wing it. But more importantly than that, we're going to have all the speakers, save Jennifer Granholm, who has a prior commitment, are going to stay after, and they're going to be mingling in the corridor, drinking with you. And it's your opportunity to really do some interesting and in-depth questions and answers. So that's kind of the big picture. So let me kick it off with our first two speakers.